Thank you so much for staying. If you just joined us, this is International Forum. We're taking a look at the Russia-Ukraine war, Ukrainian counter-offensive, its impact in the world. I said it before, we confirmed Ukraine can really get at Russia, but how far have they gone with their counter-offensive? With me here in the studio, I have a lecturer from UNIBEN, and of course a political analyst, political affairs commentator. Join me to welcome Honorable Frank Amego. It's been like a while, a long while.
It's work exigencies.
Work exigencies.
Yes.
Interesting. very interesting.
Yeah.
All right, so I believe you're following the trend.
Yeah.
You're following the war that's been raging between Russia and, of course, Ukraine. Russia still maintains that it is a military action, a tactical military action to protect its region. But people like say that, look, this is a full-blown war. After much bombardment, after much pummeling, after so many devastating attacks on Ukrainian soil, somewhere along the line, Ukraine has also been able to throw one or two punches, but not without repercussion and retaliation also from the Russian side. I mean, for what is happening, what do you have to say about the recent counter-offensive by the Ukrainian forces?
Yes, it's shocking to the world because the case of dry bones rising up again. And the way Ukraine is going about it is to show that a bully must not be on top all through. So the best way to handle a bully is what Ukraine is doing now. And recently now, some days ago, they were able to kill the Black Sea fleet commander. And that's a big blow to Russia. And they have been able to reclaim some lost communities. And that goes to show that Ukraine is battle ready more than ever before to ensure that Russia will not bombard them the way they used to be. They are highly resolute, and they are ensuring that this is a fight of destiny, and they're not going to give up at any point. My only concern is what will be happening next year in the United States of America if the ruling party loses out. It will negatively impact on the success of the Ukrainian war, because this party now, Democratic Party, is on the side of Ukraine. One wouldn't know if they lose out in US next year, what damage will so much cause. But I am hopeful that if they get more support, as Zelensky did recently to meet with the Prime Minister of Canada to gather more support, and if that support is sustainable, the fight, I think that there's a place, Tokmak, down south of it, they are going to reclaim that, going towards Crimea. And that's the route by which Russia brings its supplies. And once that is fully recovered, supplies to their troops, that the Russian troops, will be greatly hindered, and that will spur boom for the Ukrainians towards fighting this war and making sure that they gain victory.
All right, now talking about gaining victory, but you get to realize that for every offensive by the Ukrainian side, there's always a repercussion. You get to see massive bombardment, you get to see massive destruction. Some call it desolation of some parts of Ukraine. How do you think they can cope with this?
Yes, they've been coping. They're not there for fun. It's a war situation, and so Ukraine has taken it to be what it is. It's a war situation. Lives will be lost. Places will be destroyed. It's not a fight that is not regulated, that one could just start fighting and you say, no, you don't have to use your nails. This way you can use anything you like. It's a free-for-all fight, excuse me. So by this approach, nobody is counting death rate. Nobody is counting destructions of one thing or the other. Of course, a lot of things have been destroyed. So what they want to show to Russia is we are not the Ukraine you think we have been. This is a rejuvenated Ukraine, and they are well armed to repel every attack made by Russia. No matter how Russia tries to bombard them, as they have been doing, Ukrainians have understood that this war may last till next year, 2024, or even beyond. So they are battle ready to attack Russia. And from the progress of work, or through this war they have embarked upon, there is hope, or there's light at the end of the tunnel, that Russia will have to understand at this point in time that Ukraine wasn't what they bargained for, that they will just go there and crush them once, and that becomes it. But the resistance, the counter-offensive, of course, we know by now that the best defense is an attack. So Ukraine has realized that we must not fold our hands here until we are all crushed by the bully Russia. So with this new zeal by the Ukrainians, I'm sure that Russia will know that they've met their match.
All right, now that is the late Wagner group leader during the time they were in Ukraine trying to mount that particular offensive. There's no Wagner, so to speak, right now. And according to reports, it's like many Wagner military, or will I say machineries, are wanting to really follow what Putin talked about, infusing them into the Russian army. Do you think this will bring forth a change in the war?
Yeah, there might be a change, to be minimal though, but if they rely on that change, it will accomplish little or nothing. Because there's no warring faction that wants to stand akimbo for you to eliminate them. So the difference to me is minimal and of no significant impact. That's the position I'm taking on that. So let the whole thing be looked into differently from this basic approach. There are more advanced approaches towards making this war on the part of Ukraine succeeding in the nearest possible time.
Okay, succeeding in this, but people are saying that the counter-offensive is bringing little or no gains in terms of regaining territory conquered by Russia. And when winter will finally be on the ground, those efforts made by Ukrainians might just be futile. What do you feel about that?
Yes, the counter-offensive is of great magnitude. There's no need to downplay it, because for Ukraine to rise up suddenly, that let's take the battle to the camp of the enemies, they would have made some calculations. They didn't just go there for the sake of going. They have done their calculations. They are aware of the resistance posed by the Russian armies, and that impact is huge. I don't want to downplay it. It's huge, and they are not relenting. One would have expected with the mice everywhere, they would have said, okay, let's go back. But in the midst of this weather, I'm sure the next couple of weeks, the weather might change over there. But still, they are not deterred. They want to get to the end of it to repel the Russian armies. And if they continue in this might, I'm very hopeful that Russia will ask for a roundtable talk. That's the only way.
Asking for a roundtable talk.
Yes.
But the proposal of having a roundtable talk, it hit break, as it's all about the brick wall, so to speak, in the sense that there was no progress in such talks. Both parties have agreed to the compromise presented by each of their representatives when they're talking about peace in Saudi Arabia. The same thing happened also in Turkey. So why would you say they will come back, discussing a roundtable, and everybody will just go their way? It's going to be kumbaya, everybody happy, peace will just be everywhere, when previous talks orchestrated by top presidents in the world didn't hit fruit?
Yes, I've seen, maybe you have not seen, a kind of a fight between two guys. that they have begged their consciences, appeal to them not to just start this fight. And against all appeals, they will start the fight. And the fight will continue, start fighting very seriously. It will just get to a point in time, they would have lost strength, both of them. And they will sit down and be talking to each other. I've seen such a fight. I've seen. Both of them will now sit down and be talking. So it was a fight now, not strength to even get up, not talk about fighting. So the magnitude of counter-offensive mounted by the Ukrainians will give a signal to the Russian government that these people, I read a devotional yesterday of the writer talking about I was bullied in a classroom. That one day made up his mind to fight back, knowing clearly and fully that the bully could bring him to a standstill. So as the bully will hit him, he will hit back in pains. So thereafter, it got to a point that the bully now understood that this boy would have had some sense on how to fight. So that was how the fight in the classroom stopped. So what Ukraine is doing now is something close to that. You have been bullying us all these years, but now we have realized that you are a human like us. What you have, we also have access to it. So that was a counter-offensive. You are fighting me, and I'm also fighting you. I'm not defending. I'm attacking. And with the way it's going, the Ukrainian army, the way they are going, they are not even afraid of any other thing anymore. As they say in local parlance, all die and die. If we remain here, we will die. If we go ahead, we will die. If you remain here and die, you die like a coward. But if you go there and fight and you die like a hero. So let's bring the hero in us out. Let the world see that we are not going to fold our arms to allow Russia to bring us down forever. So the fight now is getting better understood. Russia felt initially that with a wave of the hand, let's just finish Ukraine. But Ukraine has refused to give up. So what they are doing now to reclaim what Russia took before, those lands, that will show to Russia that Ukraine hasn't been what we thought they were. And they need to do a new strategy, re-strategize to ensure that they're going to repair Ukraine. But the way it is going, to repair Ukraine army now is almost impossible. They made up their minds, they have all it takes to create a counter-offensive. And if you took notice properly, discover that a lot of their activities, a lot of their weapons, warships have been damaged, badly damaged. And that tells Russia that Ukraine has emerged.
Okay. You just hold on. I want to go for a break. We'll return. We'll continue with this discussion. If you just joined us, this is International Forum. If you just joined us, this is International Forum, and we are taking a look at the Ukraine-Russian war, the impact of the counter-offensive by Ukraine. Yes, it's no longer news Ukraine right now can get at Russia, but for each bomb exploded in Russian soil, it's like hundreds, torrents of bomb will get detonated in Ukrainian soil. Once that bomb explodes in Russia, Ukraine will also anticipate for a very, very strong response from Russia. This time around, Joe Biden made a promise saying that they are going to give Ukrainians long-range weapons. I mean, if you choose to give Ukraine a long-range weapon, what do you think is the end game?
Yeah, the end game is to tell Russia that you are not as strong as you're trying to make your world understand. If the long-range rocket or so is given to them, to Ukraine, and is launched, it will make Russia to have a rethink. And the end game, as I've tried to put across, is let's discuss this problem we have been fighting over. There'll be a roundtable talk at the end of the day, because a lot of Russians, to my mind, they are not in support of what is happening. It's a Putin war. It's not a Russian war. So if more attacks are launched against Russia and more lives are lost, then people can come to the streets to express their minds that this war should come to an end. Because the counter-offensive has come to stay. Ukraine is not going to beg the matter anymore. Tooth for tooth, eye for eye, all through. So let US really do what they promised, and Ukraine will be better for it. And as they launch those attacks more and more against Russia, Russia will have a rethink. But before now, they are thinking that, who is Ukraine? Ukraine, that small place. Let's just go there and trample upon them. Just between David and Goliath. That is a walkover match. But the walkover match against Ukraine now would not be such a war that Russia will regret. So get to the point that Russia will regret the war. Putin in particular will regret ever launching an attack or creating a war between itself and Ukraine.
Is it Putin regretting or Vladimir Zelensky regretting for ever engaging in a battle against Russia, because he was like, look, don't join NATO? That was what started all this. Had it been that, according to report, had it been that Zelensky chose to listen to what Putin advised him to do way back, would have been where we are right now, talking about Russian-Ukraine war. In this regard, who do you think really would regret?
Zelensky would never regret this war, because Zelensky did not initiate this war. It's a sovereign state. Ukraine is a sovereign state and is not to be dictated to by another country. You have advised a nation that is sovereign. A nation decided not to take to your advice. So where should there be a problem at that point? You will have a personal advisor, not a personal commander. If you advise me on some issues, it's not left for me to review what you've said. So I'm sure Zelensky reviewed what Putin said, not to join NATO, and observe that to be for the benefit of Ukraine to join NATO instead of not joining. So what I think Putin should have done is to appeal to the conscience of Zelensky, to convince him further why they shouldn't join NATO, not to launch out an attack. It was Putin that started the war, not Zelensky. You could advise me, but I have the priority, the opportunity, the stand to accept or to reject your piece of advice. But to threaten me that if I don't take to your advice, you will launch an attack against me. You never liked me in the first instance. If you were saying I shouldn't join NATO for the benefit of mutual coexistence, then you prove the point. I'm sure Ukraine would have thought over it and decided not to join. But now you are advising with a caveat that if you join, I will attack you. So that doesn't show the form of friendliness in the first instance. So I'm sure along that line, the threat, let's see what will happen if I join or make an attempt to join. And now, Ukraine trying to make an attempt to join, Russia started invading. Why is invading? Should have been...
They call it special military operation in Ukraine.
But it's an invasion.
Whatever you want to call it, they call it special military operation to protect the Russian side or the Russian-speaking citizens in Ukraine. That's what they said.
Yeah, that's not the best way to protect them. You don't cut off the head because somebody has a headache. There are better options. If you have explored all the options and the only one option left is to embark on the war, maybe, just maybe you will do that. But war does not most times solve anything. Innocent lives have been lost, properties have been destroyed, and there is no plan on ground to go back to the state you were in before the war. You only can recover. That's why they say in Benin, there is no war at any point that you rejoice over. You can't rejoice over any war. Because all your activities are going to be monitored and controlled to the point that those fighting in the war will not have peace. There is no person at war that's at peace. You're always afraid of anything. The slightest movement by any object, you think is an attack. So the move made by Putin to have attacked Ukraine was the worst ever decision he would have taken in life.
Now, some of the opinion that from what is going on, it's like the world is pitching itself against Russia. A exception of very few of them like China, North Korea, and of course some Arab countries trying to play neutral. That this might push Russia into using what they threatened to use before, tactical nuke. After all, the U.S., after giving cluster bombs to Ukraine, right now they're adding long-range missiles, and they've approved Poland to give Ukraine fighter jets. That all this being together, Russia may be forced to go for the big gun. What do you think about this?
Russia can't do that. They can't. Other nations that appeared supportive before now, they have their own challenges. North Korea has its problems against South. China is fighting Taiwan. So they have no time to intervene in Russia-Ukraine war anymore. So if what Putin is asking Zelensky to do, not to join NATO, is the reason for this fight, that reason is baseless. I have not joined. Okay, I want to join. You tell me why I shouldn't join. Okay, because of some Russian citizens in my neighborhood. Okay, you let them go back to your country. If you are afraid that NATO will use Ukraine as a base, just like the backyard of Russia, and Russia will feel threatened, then let's address those issues. Join NATO with a clause not letting them have a base near us. Please, for peaceful coexistence. So if Putin had come up with something peaceful, I don't think in any way that Ukraine would have attended to the matter the way he did. So Putin is just relying on his weapons. And these weapons can fail. Whatever the man had in mind, the fleet commander of the Black Sea, those ideas are gone because he's dead. So is it not when Putin is alive, he's threatening? What if he sleeps and he doesn't wake up? Those ideas would have gone to the grave. So what I think will be better for human coexistence is to sheath all the swords and to renegotiate whether or not you should join NATO. And with the sovereignty of Ukraine, there's no other country that can impose a decision or a piece of advice on a sovereign nation. I have not called you to advise me. You are a man over your home, I'm a man over my home. Anything you're saying is a suggestion. But if what you are saying that is a command, I will resist it, no matter how good that suggestion or a piece of advice will be, because you are imposing on me whether I like it or not. And such a negotiation would have been so chaotic to the point that I will join, let's see what happens. Okay, if you join, I will show you what will happen. I'm sure these arguments snowballed into these fights we are seeing today.
All right, arguments snowballing into fight we are seeing today. So much saying apart from nuclear weapon, Russians, they are trying to buy time for winter to really start. They have the weapon according to report, which is the gas supply. After all, they're the one that supplies over 40% of gas to Europe, including Ukraine. Do you think they may cash in on this to say, look, withdraw the support to Ukrainians or else we'll lock up supply of gas? Don't forget that when winter is so severe without gas being supplied to these countries, it might spell doom for them.
In the next 6 weeks, the weather will change up there. And the Ukrainian armies are aware of it. It's going to be a sudden occurrence. that winter just came up. They are aware of all this, as it's part of the war. And if Russia says we're not going to supply gas to you, it's part of the war. So both parties are ready. Some other neighboring nations whereby this withholding of the gas will affect, they already had a plan B for some parts of Europe.
As it stands right now, the only country with plan B is Germany, that went about opening their old mine, their old coal mine, for heat in case of the winter. Others are trying to rely from gas supply from African country that have been sabotaged right now by the coup in Niger. So how are they going to survive without playing ball with Russia?
They will survive. It's part of the strategies that Putin is putting in place to gain favor from some innocent countries around them. If you cut off the gas supply, you are not going to use all the gas yourself, as it has been a means of foreign exchange. So if you are not supplying to me, you keep what you have. I'm sure these other nations have alternatives. They have. Because Germany came up openly to say they have their old store to reactivate, does not mean that those nations that have not spoken out don't have a plan B. They have. So that will be a shocker against Putin to suddenly realize that these other nations, in fact, he could use the withholding of the gas to threaten, have their own backups. They're going to release their joker on time. It's a national thing. If Russia does not supply us gas, are we going to perish as a nation? No nation will fold his arms. What if you say, okay, we are going to join Russia to fight Ukraine, and the way Putin is not a reliable person and turns against us, so we should still have our backup. There's what some persons call vest money. You came to visit somebody and the person is not at home, or the person treated you badly. The vest money would make sure you get home with your money than to go empty-handed, and if anything happens, you're going to check home. So other nations, neighboring nations, neighbors to Russia, they have a backup plan.
Backup plan. Don't forget that this thing happened last year to the extent that some countries started going cap in hand to meet Russia. In Russia's own terms, that was how they got gas. And that affected the prices of gases towards the end of last year. If memory serves me correctly, there was this increment in gas price because of the control of Russia in the Eurozone. The other ones giving more than 40%. So how do you think they will survive this time around, knowing fully well that most plans on the ground to supply Europe gas from other countries is not yet fully realized? It's a known fact.
We say you agree with me. In the midst of the threat of not supplying the gas, those nations are still existing. Whatever strategies they embarked upon to survive from last year to this year, I will tell you free of charge that they have better strategies. They say they pursue person, they show person road. So we survived this thing last year, we can still survive now. If you push such a threat to Nigeria as a nation, no way we are in Nigeria, no matter how bad the situation is, in a week or two after, everybody will readjust. We'll look for a way. These other countries, they are not technologically backward. They can make something, like improvise an alternative for them to survive. And they are aware of the kind of person Putin is. You don't use that as a bait to trap us. No nation does that. If you do that, you have lost your sovereignty. Putin, the way he's treating Ukraine, is a signal to other nations that I wanted to join this group of persons. He said, if I join, you will kill me. Can Russia do the same or something similar to other nations that will be relying on the gas supply by Russia to now give a conditionality again? For me to give you this gas for this period, you must be subjected to this. So no one nation wants to go in a way that will undermine the sovereignty of his own nation. No nation does that. So they have alternatives. I can tell you free of charge. If they could survive that last year, they can survive this year.
Okay, so they can survive. If they survived last year, they can survive this year because few weeks from now, the weather will change.
Yes.
Winter will come. And they've been singing with this. They've been talking about this. People have been trying to prepare the minds of Ukrainians on how they will go about that if they really want to succeed. Whatever counter-offensive measures that are taken, they have to speed it up. Even the U.S. military personnel that planned with the Ukrainians told that this is the time frame that you have. If it gets to this extent, counter-offensive may just be futile. But let's take a look at the moves right now made by Ukraine. Do you see more bombardment on Russian soil by the Ukrainian forces?
More. Because Ukraine has realized that if they had started this counter-offensive much earlier than this, the damage done to them would have been minimal. And in the same matter, that the U.S. government has promised to give them more offensive weapons. So if this attack, counter-attack against Russia has started much earlier, I think by now Putin would have been having a rethink and a type of regret for going into this war. So if the counter-offensive continues, which I think it should continue, because they relax at this point, Russia bombards them.
It should continue for how long? They have barely 6 weeks before winter will start, before winter will commence. 6 weeks from calculation, a month plus.
I don't think, we are both civilians. A military officer may not think like us. That this thing you want to embark upon is to the end. No army fights a war and times it. We'll fight for 2 hours then go back. There should be a reason for the fight. Maybe the reason in this case is to recapture all the places we have lost, or one or two things. Not until and unless they have regained their proposed plan, they have met with them, the war continues. They knew very well that weather changes. In 6 weeks' time, they're going to be neck deep into winter. They are also aware, and they are prepared for it. So this is not the time for them to retreat. They say no retreat, no surrender. So they want to push in more and more. Maybe the pace might be a bit slower than summer period, but they are ready to ensure that the plan, the game plan is met, and the counter-offensive continues unabated.
So you mean it's going to be massive upon counter-offensive? Talk about drones, talk about long-range missile, kamikaze drones, and the rest of them.
Yes.
Because don't forget that for each attack of Ukraine on Russian soil, they kind of retaliates more than 100-fold compared to the devastation created by the attack. Do you think once more they can really sustain this, the Ukrainians?
They are doing that already. The war is not 1 month old, it's more than a year old. If by that simple calculation, they understand that Russia will not relent, they too themselves will not relent. So the counter-offensive should continue, and maybe I'm recommending a greater magnitude, so that Russia will have an understanding that these persons we thought we could just bring down in a short while are not as weak as we thought. That will send a signal to Russia that this war, we need to go back to the drawing board to do a re-strategization of what we earlier planned. And the way they are getting supplies from U.S., Zelensky went to Canada not quite long, recently, begging for more support. And if those supports come to pass, the counter-offensive will be improved upon. So let Russia multiply by 100%. I don't think Ukraine will be bothered, because they have a target. We want to end this bullying, and it is now or never. According to late Sonny Okosu, is now or never. The now or never attitude is what Ukraine is using now to fight Russia. So counter-offensive continues. And before they came to this point, that let's counter these attacks. They calculated. Armies not just go blindly into attacking another nation. Or this proposal for a counterattack was a thing that just flashed through their minds. Okay, let's just go ahead. They have done their calculations. And as you express the fear now, that each missile they throw at Russia, Russia will multiply. They are aware of these calculations. And that's why they have gone this far to ensure that the counteroffensive is sustained.
All right. Now, before we call it a wrap on this show, you know, psychologists have a way of profiling someone's emotional state of mind. Now, some psychologists are saying that from what they saw in Zelensky, it's like the war is overwhelming the young man. From what they saw, his body language, his countenance and everything, started comparing pictures of when the war started, started comparing pictures of when the war was like, you know, at mid-year, so to speak, and right now it's like everything is just coming down the shoulders of this man. Do you see him having enough strength emotionally, psychologically to really withstand the onslaughts of Russia against his country, Ukraine?
I also draw inspiration from what I've been saying. If he could survive it a month ago, about a year ago, Zelensky has the psychological standpoint to ensure that his own nation fights Russia to a standstill. So photographs now, can't use photographs to determine his strength. It's the way you appear before the camera that might in a way show what you want to display to the viewers. But right inside of his heart, the man is ready. Otherwise, he would have gone to Canada of recent to ask for more support. If he wanted to just hands off, he would have done that before now. Because his administration, he has so much to portray before the whole globe. And if he gives up now to send a wrong signal to nations that might likely have young leaders. You see, let's draw inspiration from Ukraine. The man could not. He lost him, and that was how the nation crumbled. Zelensky has all it takes to carry on with the war.
All right, from a comedian, he became the president, and now he's a commander-in-chief, marshalling out defense and, of course, offense against the onslaught on his country by Russia. How long do you think this man will stand? How long do you think this war will rage? How long do you think also the test of human perseverance will endure? Is it going to be fight to the finish? Is it going to be them coming to the round table to talk about ceasefire and for peace to take place? If the war should pitch tent against Russia, we'll be tempted to go for the ultimate weapon, which is the nuclear weapon. Only time will tell. Thank you so much for coming to this show. I appreciate a wonderful analysis. Let's hope and pray that during this winter, Ukraine will just have the strength, the courage to stand and defend their country.
Sure.
We'll do it again next week, Tuesday. God willing. Bye for now.